how are you? Welcome back to my channel. So excited you're here because we're doing my July reading wrap up. I actually ended up reading 11 books in July and I had one DNF. So we're going to start with my DNF and then we're going to go not in order of like favorite to least favorite necessarily, but like by star rating. So we'll go with my like lowest rating to the highest. The only ones that are in order are my final two and they are my most favorites. So I'm saving my favorite for last. So let's get into it. We'll start with the DNF, which is A People's History of the Vampire Uprising by Raymond A. Villarreal. This is one that my TBR board game chose for me. It's not counting against me because I will not be going back to it. So it's not going to be on my TBR anymore. I'm going to unhaul it. Yeah. This one I think just isn't for me. Don't think it's necessarily a bad book. Just wasn't for me. Started off strong. Started off this lady Lauren. She's a CDC investigator and she's fairly new, so they just send her to the ones that aren't high profile cases. They're not a big deal. So they get this call about, a dead body, and this body is who they believe is an illegal immigrant, and they don't think it's a big deal. So they're just like, hey, you're new, just go to this dead body. It's not a big deal. So they sent her. And she gets there and she, sees this dead body and, she's investigating it or whatever. She goes to her hotel room at the end of the day and she gets this knock on her door late at night. She answers it and the people from the morgue are like, hey, problem, the dead body is missing. And yeah, the guards or whatever have, been attacked by this dead body, whatever. Well, it was a dead body. Now it's not because the dead body got up and like attacked some people. And they realize that it's a big problem. And before they know it, like other dead bodies have gotten up and the same thing has happened. And, it's vampires. Well, that part of it was super fascinating. I was really into that. And I was really into Lauren's perspective. And I get about halfway through the book. That's about where I put the book down, is halfway. And I realized we never went back to Lauren's perspective. It went back and forth for a little bit, but then she just freaking disappeared. Never went back to her. I'm like, where the hell did she go? Yeah, so the book very quickly got into the more political side of things, because the vampires, like, people started being turned on purpose. Some people died when they returned, and some people, it went very well and they're now living eternally and they're gonna live forever or whatever. But it became very political and discrimination against vampires and all of that. And then the religious aspect of it. I don't care about the religious aspect. I don't care about politics. The very extent of what I care about politics is what I have to know in order to know who to vote on. That is all. I don't care about politics. Politics stress me out. So yeah, it got into the political side of things and the religious side of things, and then it freaking lost me, and I do not care. It was told more of like a documentary style. If it had stayed with like the more creepy side of things, like in the beginning where the vampires were like, the bodies were like getting up and wreaking havoc and all that, I was very into that side of things and Lauren's perspective. But when we got into the religion and politics, it lost me. So yeah. What I did like, it was based in Texas. That was cool. I live in Texas. I believe the author is from Texas. But unfortunately, it just got too much. It was boring as far as that goes. It was just very much documentary style, and the politics and discrimination of the vampires and all that. It wasn't for me. Really cool cover though. I really liked it. The cover, it looks really cool on a shelf, but no, wasn't for me. Unfortunately, I'm gonna be unhauling that one. Now we'll get into my 2-star. I only had one that was 2 stars, and that was The Island by Natasha Preston. This one, okay, so a group of social media influencers have been invited to this island before the island has been opened, and they are to build hype. They're going to be taking photos and videos and show it on their social media to show their following before this theme park opens. Yeah, and it's very much a theme park for the rich. It's very exclusive, very, very expensive to go there. So, first of all, the influencers are insufferable. They're not likable. They're obnoxious. To me, they were. The theme park itself is really weird. It's very dark. It's very gothic. The owner of the theme park, he's weird too. He's an odd dude. The setting itself had potential. I will say that. It very much had potential. It was a rainy island. Like I said, it was creepy. It had that whole like carnival vibe to it. Yeah, setting. It definitely had potential as far as setting goes. It definitely did. It was almost like a parody. You know, like the scary movie where it's making fun of other scary movies. This felt like it was making fun of scary movies and scary books. Because like I felt like every horror book cliche was in here and every horror movie cliche was in here. It's like they know there's a killer on the loose and they'll be like, oh, was that the wind? I think that was just the wind. You know that there is a killer on the loose and you think it was the wind. Are you really that freaking stupid? And you know, like they just had this idea, a very faint idea of who the killer was, and they just freaking ran with it. Dude is wearing a mask and they're like, oh, I know who it is. Ruled out everybody else. They ruled out every other suspect and just freaking ran with it, and he's wearing a mask. Y'all can't be this dumb. There's no way y'all are this dumb. But yeah, they were that dumb. They were that dumb. Yeah, I just had a whole lot of complaints. I had a whole lot of complaints about this book. I read the whole thing. But the ending was ridiculous. The motive was ridiculous. They made just stupid mistake after stupid mistake after stupid mistake. The kills weren't unique. It was just typical slasher kills. Like if you're gonna make if you're gonna make the characters stupid and you're gonna make them obnoxious and not likable, at least make the kills unique. You know what I mean? Like make something worth the read. The main character Paisley, like she just kept bringing up, oh, I have money now. Like that was brought up so many times. Oh, I have a good thing I have money now, because she's like a social media influencer and she's like got all this following, so she has money. Like, but she just kept bringing up, oh, well, I have a good thing I have money now. Why? Why do you keep bringing that up? It was just really obnoxious. I don't know. It just didn't work. And then I felt like the characters, like they just all took turns freaking out. One of them would just freak out, and then the other ones would be like, just calm down already. Like, quit freaking out. And then another one would freak out. It would be one of the same ones that freaked out early, that was telling the other one not to freak out earlier. And then another one would be like, stop freaking out. Like, calm down. Like, stop. They would just take turns freaking out. I don't know. It just, it didn't work. It didn't work for me at all. Yeah. So we'll get into my 3 stars now. We have Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. This one follows Vesta. Vesta is an elderly widow, and she is walking through the woods one day with her dog, and she comes across this note. And the note just says, her name was Magda. Nobody will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me. Here is her dead body. And instead of going to the police with this note, she takes the note to her house, and she obsesses over this note. She comes up with all these different scenarios of who possibly Magda could be, who her killer could be, what the motive could possibly be, all these different things. She does all this research, and she's just this. She's lonely, she's bored, she's just buying her time. She doesn't have any family left. Her husband had passed, like I said. So she's just buying time. That's all she's doing. She doesn't have anything to fill her days with. So she's just filling her days with this mystery. That's all. And that's all the book is about, really. But you're following Ottessa through several different seasons while she's sorting out this mystery to herself. And she goes to the library and she does all this research and she tries to figure out all these different scenarios to herself. And she does have her dog, so you have an animal companion there too. But most of this book was, I would say it was cozy, but it was also very boring because you're just going through her everyday, her day-to-day life and what she does in her day. But I would say most of it was very boring until about the last quarter of the book when things like start to unravel more and more. But yeah, I would say this is about, ultimately, this is about getting older. It's about, you know, isolation. It's about loneliness, grief, you know, solitude. And it's about her coming to terms with getting older. It's about her coming to terms with who she is, who she was when she was with her husband. You know, it's coming to terms with her grief and her loss and who her husband was, and, you know, all of those things. There's a lot to that. But like I said, most of it was pretty boring until the last quarter of it. I feel like this book needed a little bit more meat to it, ultimately, because not a lot happened, really. You know, aside from her just trying to solve this mystery and was there a murder, was there not a murder, you know, like, but ultimately it was pretty boring as far as all that goes. She was a pretty fascinating lady, but nothing really happened until the last like quarter of the book. But next up we have Village of the Mermaids by Carlton Malik III. This one is bizarro horror. He writes some really wild stuff. This was so crazy. Yeah, so the mermaids are a protected species by the government. You cannot kill them, and they are absolutely vicious. And they have these people that stay along the shore that are called feeder people that are basically bait for the mermaids. And they are people that, certain people that have done bad things or whatever, they choose as bait. And the mermaids, for whatever reason, have stopped feeding on them. They've just stopped. And now they are targeting the fishermen. And this Dr. Black has been called in to figure out why. He's supposed to figure out what is going on with the mermaids. Why are they not feeding on the feeder people anymore? So he's got his own issues too. And I can't tell you why, but he's got his own issues. But as he's figuring out what the situation is with these mermaids, he figures out that there's something far scarier out there than the mermaids. And that's all I'll say about that, because it's a pretty short book, so I don't want to spoil it for you. But yeah, this was just a crazy, bizarre, the typical weirdness that you would expect from this author. It was just a weird, good time. Lots of grossness, and just, it was wild. It was just freaking wild. It's not my favorite that I've read from him. I've read others that were 5 stars for me, but it was still really fun. It was a good time. Next up, we have Chlorine by Jade Song. This one follows Renyu, who is a high school swimmer, and she is dealing with a lot of pressure. She is feeling the pressure from her coach, from her parents, from her peers, from her, you know, from the rest of her team. And she is slowly just losing her marbles as the, you know, as the book goes on, the story goes on. But she really wants to become a mermaid. She's obsessed with mermaids. She's always been obsessed with mermaids. Yeah, this was really weird. It was a really weird book. I would say it's more literary fiction than horror. It's classified as horror, but it's definitely more in the literary fiction realm. Yeah, it was just really weird. There's something about it that didn't quite connect for me. It didn't quite 100% work. I could see what the author was trying to do, and I appreciate what the author was trying to do, but there was something with the pacing that didn't quite work, and something with the overall, like, the tone was dark, and you can kind of see what's coming, like, you know what's coming, because there's a lot of foreshadowing, so you know what's coming, and so you have that kind of sense of like dread and, you know, that overall dark tone to it. But there was something with the pacing, because it goes back and forth between Renyu and her best friend, and her best friend's point of view is told in letters, and those letters, you know, shed a completely different light on the situation and a completely wildly different point of view, and sort of like this outside perspective. And they are just told in a completely different tone that just took me completely out of the story, just because they were just, like I said, completely different tone. And I think that's maybe what changed the pacing, or like, you know, I think that's what affected the pacing of it. You know, I think it could have maybe been told in a different way or done a different way as far as her friend's point of view, aside from the letters, because I think that's what affected the pacing so much. But yeah, it was different. It was weird. But you know, there was a lot of commentary on race and on sexism and just the pressures of being an athlete and all that comes with that, and also just about growing up, and you know, because it's a coming of age story, but just, you know, growing up, especially growing up and being an athlete. And also the boys and the men in this book were just awful and disgusting. So yeah, just, it was a really weird book. I did enjoy it. I really liked it. Yeah, it was really good. But like I said, if it wasn't for the pacing and the and all that, I would have rated it higher. But it was still really good. The next one is one that an author sent me. It was sent to me digitally, so I will put a picture of it here. And it was called The Shroud by D.M. Gritzmacher. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. But I'm going to read you the description on the back because there was a lot going on in this one. It follows 3 different timelines. The first timeline: on a quest to unearth the lost tomb of one of history's most enigmatic figures, renowned Egyptian scholar Emery Stander and his son Dr. Tim Stander unwittingly uncover a secret long thought buried for all eternity. Tainted by darkness, what emerges out of the tumultuous sands of time sprawls like a shadow until it blackens everything the 2 men hold dear, draping their past, present, and future in the tempest of horror stretching across generations. And then the second timeline: in a quiet Midwestern community in the 1960s, Detective Howard Davis and his new partner are called to a grisly scene of carnage in the dead of night, discovering a splayed and torn body of wet flesh dripping silently within the gloom of a derelict industrial park. As the 2 men work to unravel the mystery surrounding the brutal murder, they stumble upon a string of equally disturbing events in the recent past. And then the third timeline: Russell Stander, following cryptic symbols etched in stone by long-dead family members, discovers a hidden passage secreted away beneath his family's abandoned mansion. Descending into the labyrinth below, what he discovers binds him to the past and hurtles him into the unknown. So, 3 different timelines. This is one of those that this is my second book that I've read from this author, and the second from this series, because this is part of a series. And he has this way of completely shocking me. Like I will send him messages and be like, what the hell, this part? And because he just has this way of doing that. But I need to start vlogging when I read these, because I could tell you that my facial expressions would say it all. And I wish I could portray that to you right now, because there's no way I could recreate it. But this book was freaking wild. It was wild. There was just so much to it. The best way I could describe it is Indiana Jones meets the Mummy, and then add in police detective drama, but make it super dark and disturbing. It's the best way I can describe it to you. It's such an intricately woven story, and it's told in a very unique way. The puzzle pieces are given a little bit at a time while going back and forth between the different timelines. And then each of the timelines are their own individual story, but you know they're going to come together eventually. You just don't know how. You know what I mean? So I would be really into the individual timelines. Like I'd be really into the one with the Egyptologist, because they're in this sort of cave situation and they're unearthing this big mystery that they've been trying to unearth forever. And I would be really into that. And then it would flip, and then you're in the 60s with the detectives and they're solving this really grisly crime, and I would really be into that. And then it would flip, and then you're in present day with the guy who has inherited his family's mansion, and he's in the underground tunnels under the family mansion, and he's got all this things happening in the passages, and I would be really into that, and it would flip again. So I'm really invested in all the individual stories. And then when it would flip, it would take me a minute to get my bearings and remember what was happening. That would be my only like thing that was confusing, like that would take me a minute. But that's just because I was so into the stories. But yeah, that would be my only complaint, if it's a complaint at all, because I was so into the stories, and it would just take me a second to get my bearings and remember what was happening. But I could read a whole book on any of the individual timelines because they were so good. The individual stories were so good, and they came together in such a satisfying way. But yeah, it was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. It was disturbing and gruesome and creepy, and it was really twisted, and I freaking loved it. This is my second book in the series, like I said, and I enjoyed this one even better than the first. I will say they can be read as a standalone, but on this one, I would say it may help to have a little bit of context from the series. You could definitely read it as a standalone though, but I think you would get more out of it if you had a little bit more context. But if you read any part of the series, definitely read trigger warnings if you have triggers. But yeah, really good. Really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant. Thank you so much to everybody who recommended this to me. There were several of you that said read this book. So when you have that many recommended books, you have to read it. And it was so freaking good, y'all. I enjoyed it. This one, so 7 years ago, this ship set sail to the, set sail to the Mariana Trench, because they were filming a mockumentary and they were bringing to life ancient sea creatures. Well, the ship washed up and was just, was found empty. All the crew members had disappeared, but there were some found footage where the crew had been attacked by what looked like mermaids, and it was pretty gory and pretty gruesome. But a lot of people thought it was a hoax. So now it's 7 years later, and another ship is being sent back out with a bunch of scientists on it to figure out if there really are mermaids. And one of the scientists is, what is her name? One of the scientists is Victoria, and her sister was one of the original crew members who was killed on the original ship. So Victoria is a scientist, and she really wants to find out what really happened to her sister. So this new ship, like I said, is filled with scientists and also crew members. Oh, yes, the mermaids are absolutely freaking terrifying in this, but the things that got me more than the mermaids were, one, the deep water, the darkness of the water, but even worse, there were several claustrophobic moments in this. Holy crap, y'all. It got me. It was so freaking terrifying. I can't even explain it. I read it at night, which was even worse. But there aren't many books that actually scare me. This one was freaking terrifying. There was just, the claustrophobic moments were the worst for me. Oh my gosh. I don't think I will ever step foot in the ocean ever. Ever again. It had me feeling like mermaids could really be real. It was just so realistic. I also appreciated all the different representations in this. There was queer rep, there were disabled scientists, there were twin deaf scientists. One of them was actually able to be on a submersible. Like, she had her own submersible, And like, she could do freaking anything she set her mind to. And love that for her. One of the crew members was autistic. That was really cool. Love that rep. So it's just things you don't see all the time, and I really appreciated that. Just, there was a lot of diversity here too, and just, I really appreciated that so much. But yeah, this was freaking terrifying. You want something, if you're afraid of like deep water or darkness or claustrophobia or terrifying mermaids, this might scare you. Really good. Next up, we have Legacy Witches by Cass K. I had the best time with this one. This was so fun. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys, the last couple were my 4-star reads. So we ventured into my 4-star reads. The Shroud, Into the Drowning Deep, 4 stars. This is also a 4-star. I forget to mention that. But, and it's late and I'm tired. Yeah. But anyways, I had the best time with this. This was so fun. Nice and witchy, atmospheric. Vienna, I don't know if it's pronounced Vienna or Vienna. I've been saying Vienna because that's how it sounds in my head. But anyways, her mom has passed, and she has acquired, what's the word? Shit. Hang on. Oh. She has inherited the family's house. It's like a Victorian mansion, and it's in Salem. Perfect setting. Well, the house is a character in and of itself because it's possessed by a demon. And the house being a character is so fun because it throws these tantrums and it has this whole personality, and it's hilarious. It's really cute. So the house throws these like little tantrums. Awesome. Love it. But yeah, it being set in Salem is really cool. It's a whole vibe, a whole setting. But she has been removed from the coven for a while on her own. Like, she didn't want anything to do with the coven, but she has been forced to come back because her mom has passed. And she's going to have to attend the funeral. She's going to have to face the coven and deal with all these things that she doesn't want to deal with. Also, she can see ghosts. That's one of the things that she has to deal with. And since the house is haunted, she's just seeing ghosts everywhere. It's really not a fun time. And this house is centuries and centuries old. So she's just seeing ghosts everywhere. And she encounters the ghosts of a missing local witch. So she gets wrapped up in this whole mystery of what happened to her. And, you know, she's dealing with that while she's there as well. Also, she befriends this trans woman while she's there named Dee. I love her personality. They struck up the most beautiful friendship. I love their friendship. It's something really special, and I love their whole dynamic is awesome. There's a lot of banter here too, a lot of fun conversations, and just it's just a lot of fun. But yeah, this is a whole vibe. The coven is terrifying. There are a lot of spooky moments, even though this was a lot of fun and there were a lot of funny times and a lot of funny conversations and just a lot of fun. There were a lot of spooky times too, because the coven is freaking terrifying, and the witches within the coven were terrifying. They were really a force too. So there were plenty of spooky moments as well. But yeah, this was just a good time. Nice and witchy. If you're looking for a witchy read. Also, I found out this is part of a series. There's actually part 2. And I kind of shamelessly messaged Twisted Retreat, because I got this one with Twisted Retreat and it's really gorgeous. I kind of shamelessly messaged them and was like, can we please get a part 2 that matches? Because I'm kind of weird about my books matching, and I really need a matching set now. And I'm like, even if it doesn't come with a box, can we like maybe do a pre-order situation? Because like I really need the matching set. And they were really nice, and they was like, oh yeah, we can, you know, we plan on doing that. And they were really sweet about it. So yeah, maybe we can get a matching set soon. So, but yeah, really love it. Really had a good time. Amazing. Next, another 4-star, still in the 4 stars, but this one, still in the 4 stars. This one, just gonna let you know, is not my normal genre. It's not horror. You're gonna be shocked. And that is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. Guys, I don't usually like romance. I don't usually like smut. And fantasy is hit or miss. This has all 3 and I freaking loved it. I had the best time. Hilarious. And the plot of this is just amazing. I have to read it. All she wanted to do was live her life in peace. Maybe get a cat. Expand the family spice farm. Really, anything that didn't involve going on an adventure where an orc might rip her face off. But they say the goddess has favorites, and if so, Sin is clearly not one of them. After Sin, in a wine-drunk stupor, saves the demon Fallon, he reveals that all he really wants to do is kill an evil witch enslaving his people. And who can blame him? But now he's dragging Cinnamon along for the ride, whether she likes it or not. On the bright side, at least he keeps burning off his shirt. Guys, it was so freaking funny. It was snarky and hilarious. On spice level, I have nothing really to compare it to because I don't typically read a lot of smut. I would say maybe like spice level 3 out of 5, but I'm just freaking guessing. There were just a couple of spice scenes, but they were pretty spicy. Hilarious. There were so many laugh out loud moments of this. Just freaking epic. I laughed so hard. And like I said, there was so much snark and banter between these two that was just so funny. And just the whole circumstances surrounding their meetup. And the whole book was an adventure. It felt like an adventure. But yeah, really, really good. I had the best time. If you like spice or romance or fantasy, or even if you don't, you just want something that's just fun, this was definitely fun. I had a really good time. Still in 4 stars. I have to tell myself now since I forgot to tell you guys earlier. We have Woman Eating by Claire Coda. Follows a mixed race vampire who is just trying to just deal with, just living among humans, but she's also dealing with this like hunger, and she's obviously has an eating disorder as well, so that's a very unique take on the vampire story. She's a mixed race vampire. Her mom is a Malaysian British vampire. Her dad was a Japanese human. Her mom turned her when she was a baby. She and her mom have a very complicated relationship. Her mom is, I would say, very narcissistic and manipulative. I won't tell you why she has an eating disorder. You'll just have to find that out. She's dealing with constant hunger. And she's moved in, or she's like created this community for herself among artists. And this is a very like artistic and creative community. So the whole book felt very artistic and creative to me. And she also works at this, artistic place as well. She also meets this guy. What the hell was his name? I think his name was Ben. But she befriends this guy Ben, and she's very much crushing on Ben, and they have very awkward conversations and very awkward interactions, and it was kind of sweet. Like, she just doesn't know how to be with him. Not like be with him, but like just be. She doesn't know how to be. You know what I mean? My favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes, I couldn't tell whether I was beginning to like him and wanted to be with him, or whether I was hungry and wanted to eat him. And then another quote, I'm not really sure what I am anymore though, whether I'm a monster or whether I'm just a woman or both. So she's just dealing with a lot. She's just very confused. And also, like, the mother-daughter dynamic. Like I said, her relationship with her mother is very complicated. She doesn't want her mom to be her problem, but then also, like, she's all her mom has. So she's constantly grappling with that guilt of that. You know what I mean? So she and her mom have this complicated relationship. Her mom is, like I said, very manipulative, and I would say narcissistic, but very manipulative. So yeah, she's constantly has this guilt and this whole weight. But yeah, this is really good. Loved the ending. The ending was really good. I can't really tell you what the ending is, obviously. There's a lot I can't say because I don't want to ruin it for you guys. But yeah, it's a very interesting take on the vampire book, and I loved it. The whole vibe of this, it felt like it was very poetic and creative and, like I said, artistic. And I love that artsy vibe and this whole community that she's created for herself. It was just really pretty. I loved it. Just kind of cozy. And next up, we're in the 5 stars now. We're at my final 2. I had 2 5-star books. First one is Any Man by Amber Tamblyn. You know, I have heard people mention like that a book wrecked them or broke them or whatever, and I never understood that until this book. I've never had a book do that to me until now. But this book absolutely wrecked me. I'm not going to tell you what it was about because it could be triggering, but I did mention this in my TBR video, what it was about. Yeah, I was prepared for this because I did know what it was about, and I prepared myself, but I still wasn't prepared for it. Yeah, it absolutely wrecked me, and this doesn't happen very often as far as books go. I'm not an emotional person. I'm not somebody that is quick to cry or have any kind of emotion, but I cried. This book made me cry, and that's something that does not ever happen. I mean, like, ugly cry. Yeah, and that's hard for me to even admit to you guys, but we're friends, so I feel like I can do that. But yeah, ugly cry. This one, yeah, it absolutely broke my heart and yeah, wrecked me. I feel like this is one, if you can handle the subject matter, everybody needs to read this. Men, women, everybody needs to read this book. It is raw, it's vulnerable, it's real, it's something that happens every day. It's just, something that is mishandled all the time by the media. It's something that I've seen police officers mishandle. Not intentionally. It's not intentionally at all. Media, yes, those jerks do mishandle it sometimes, a lot of times. Police officers, no. It's not something they do on purpose. It's something that they don't know how to handle. Not on purpose. They don't know. Sometimes they don't know how to handle it. I have seen them handle it very well sometimes, but some of them just don't know how. That, just need maybe more training or, whatever. It's not something they do intentionally. But the media, absolutely, they don't know how to handle it, or they are just insensitive jackasses sometimes. But, and it's something that goes unreported a lot, and this for reasons, and this goes into why. But this was very powerful, and it was very poetic and very beautifully written for something that is a very tough topic. Something that was important to note, and something that you notice in this, is how every single man in here deals with it differently. Some of them with anger, some of them by shutting themselves away from the world. Some of them, one of them was so worried about how his kids were going to handle it. And he wasn't even as worried about himself as how he was worried about, his family. Or one of them, handled it more with humor. And it just goes to show that just because somebody's laughing and joking doesn't mean they're not hurting, or doesn't mean they're not going through something or whatever. But yeah, it was just a very powerful read. I think it was something that everybody should read if they can. Really, I do. But yeah, it was very beautifully written. Really good. Very well written. Yeah, really pretty. I don't know how something that's that tough of a subject matter could be so well and beautifully written, but it was really good. And my last one, my favorite book of the month, and has quickly become one of my favorite books of all time, is Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. I don't know, this is my first Dan Simmons book, and I'm definitely going to be reading more by this author. This was really good. Yeah, so this one, I'll read you the back. It says, "It's the summer of 1960. The 6th grade boys of Elm Haven, Illinois are forging the powerful, magical bonds that a lifetime of growth and loss will never erase. Amid the sun-drenched cornfields and the sly flirtations of the town's young girls, that loyalty will be pitilessly tested. From the silent depths of the old central school, a hulking fortress tinged with the mahogany scent of coffins, an invisible evil drifts outward, plunging Mike, Dwayne, Dale, Harlan, and Kevin into a war without boundary or mercy, where an eternal enemy owns the night. Yeah, this one, I was born in 86, not 1960, but even I felt the nostalgia of this one. You know, just that riding around on bicycles, watching fireflies, camping in tents, playing with friends, and, you know, roasting marshmallows by a campfire. This definitely took me back to my 12-year-old self, and I could feel the nostalgia throughout the whole thing. Also, this is a chunky book at 600 pages, but no page felt wasted. You know, a lot of times you'll have a chunky book like this and it feels like it drags and it feels like it's rambly, or you're like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get through this? This did not feel like that. It felt like every page was important, and it didn't feel wasted at all. It felt, you know, like I felt like I flew through this. I enjoyed every single page. I enjoyed it so much. I had a really great time. Character development was spot on. All the characters were, you know, they had their unique personalities and their quirks. The little friend group was so special. They all cared for each other and protected each other, and I just loved it. You really felt for all of them, and yeah, they were just so special. And also, I will say that the author really took his time to describe the town and describe the school and just really set the scene. And it really paid off because it felt like I was there. I could see, hear, smell everything in the town. It was like I was there. Yeah, it felt like I was right there, right alongside the boys, and I was having an adventure right there with them. It was special. I feel like Dan Simmons created something truly special with this one. The villains were terrifying. This was just, it was awesome. It was freaking awesome. It felt like an adventure, and a terrifying adventure, but an adventure nonetheless. There were, you know, I would be laughing one minute and terrified one minute, and then the next it would be like tugging at my heartstrings. I felt everything here, and I freaking loved it. I had a great time. Definitely going to be going and reading more of Dan Simmons' books. But yeah, loved it. And I freaking love this cover too. Like, oh. I know I've showed you guys before, but I can't get enough of this cover. Love it. But yeah, that's my number one, and it's going to be in my top 10 books of all time. So those are all the books I read in July. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite book was in July. I would love to know. I'm always looking to add to my TBR, even though it's never going to end ever. I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.